Hello, I'm fine. And you? Hello. So I will wait for more spectators and I will start my new lesson. Merhaba, nasılsın? Okay, so many spectators asked me to show some games which was played by Mikhail Tal. Okay, so I respect wishes of my spectators, so I decide to analyze candidates semi-final match between Mikhail Tal and Bent Larsen, which was played in 1965 and finished with victory of Mikhail Tal with minimal score in 10 games. So Tal won 3 games, lost 2 games, and 5 games ended with draw. And for today, my program is to explain first 3 games from this match. In the game 1, Bent Larsen played with white and started with d4. Okay, actually I didn't see this game, Anand against Carlsen, but okay, I will see. But okay, maybe even today after my lesson I will check it. Larsen and Tal played 2 matches. So second match, I don't remember exactly which year it was, but Larsen won. So it was first game. It was first match between them. Second match, Bent Larsen won. I don't remember which score, and I don't remember in which year they played, but it's easy to check. About Bent Larsen. So I remember I read the article which was written by Peter Heine Nielsen, who visited Bent Larsen in Argentina. Okay, Bent Larsen already was quite old and was not able to travel anymore, but okay, so for him was very pleasant that Nielsen visited him and they talked about chess a lot, and Larsen explained him some his ideas. For example, he explained that if try to play only good moves, it's very likely that your opponent will try to do the same also. Both will play in decent level, and very difficult to win in such attitude against strong player. So, according to Larsen, for practical reason, if you want to have practical result in chess, it's not the best way. Try to do always best moves or at least good moves, but it's better to play sometimes good moves, sometimes bad moves. And with this attitude, you have more chances to reach success. And I remember I discussed about this article with my friend and second Orez Hryzak, and he asked me, is it interesting if Bent Larsen used this strategy in his match against Bobby Fischer, which finished with 0-6. Okay, I didn't know what to answer, and I don't know what strategy was during this match. I mean, strategy of Larsen. Okay, probably one day we can consider this match. It's also possible idea, but okay. In general, I don't think that such a strategy was a good idea to utilize, especially against Fischer, because Fischer had excellent feeling of mistakes, and probably nobody uh, could punish his opponents for mistakes than Fischer did it. So against Fischer, this strategy of Larsen, which he explained it and suggested to Nielsen, it's hardly good. But okay, uh, also there is true that not every day you are playing against Fischer, so sometimes it's important to beat another opponent. So maybe against another opponents, this strategy was quite well. And even I remember that Anatoly Karpov admit that Larsen was incredibly strong about weaker opponents. So, for example, many players could not beat in classical game. Okay, another one. So there are some players not so strong, but uh, it was not easy to beat them. But Larsen felt very well their weakness and play in unusual style. So according to Anatoly Karpov, he was very, very strong against weak players. Okay, for Fischer, I don't know what was his strategy, but one day we can try to analyze all of the games from this match. I mean, match Larsen Fischer and try to understand what was strategy of Fischer for this match and what was strategy of Larsen, and try to understand what happened, why such a score, and many other things. But okay, uh, mm, winning position. Okay, okay, it's another topic, but Grandchester. Okay, so I don't know what is my next tournament at all, but okay, it's totally another question which has no attitude to match between Bent Larsen and Mikhail Tal, and also we are discussing today about Robert Fischer. It's quite interesting chess player, incredibly interesting chess player, and of course I would like to devote some time during my streams, but okay, I cannot do just for this evening. I cannot do everything, so I want to explain. So d4 was played in game 1, Larsen white, Tal black, and knight f6. So we see King's Indian in the board. And what can I say? Uh, Tal played King's Indian and had some good games, some bad games as well. But I remember that he also played King's Indian, and his match between Lev Pulgaevsky in 1970, 1980, in 1979 was interzonal in Riga, probably in game 1, and also lost. So although Pulgaevsky played this system, knight d3, f5, bishop d2, knight f6 was played, f3, f5, c5, g5, rook c1, knight g6, this, knight b5, rook f7, queen c2, something like this. And later Tal lost the game. After it, in the same match, also after bishop d2, he took on e4 and played knight f5 and drew game. So it's a little bit passive according to modern theory, but still solid. But okay, so I can attract your attention to coincide. So against Larsen, Tal played King's Indian same line because now, okay, knight c6 is popular, but there are other variations like c6, like knight a6, like knight bd7. So in last stream, we have seen knight bd7. Ava played against Bogolubo. But so this position, I mean, in first game against Larsen, Tal tried King's Indian and lost, and then in first game against Pulugaevsky, he also tried King's Indian and also lost again. So probably it was not the best idea to play this variation in the match against strong and good prepared opponents. But well, not so easy, of course. Of course, Tal had some preparation, some strategy, and okay, I will try to understand what was happened. And now at the moment I will check the question. Okay. From Norway Chess, okay, at the moment I can explain something. Norway Chess now in action, so probably 5 rounds was played already. So I have no plan to analyze this tournament. Now I explain in matches and tournament from the past. But okay, this is not because I have ideas that games from past was more interesting than games now. It's not my conclusion, but I am planning to make stream during the candidates tournaments, which will start in 16th of June. So before of this very modern and very interesting tournament for everybody, I want to take my attention to all the games. If I play King's Indian with black or white, both, okay, but with white I have more practice, so with black I played King's Indian too, but not so often. Player Fischer respect among maybe I don't know. Unfortunately, we have no possibility to ask Fischer himself about this. Also, I have an idea one day to demonstrate some games between Tal and Fischer, but game between them in the Taimanov Sicilian. You mean Taimanov Sicilian Carlsen Anand, right? Okay, so Gu felt that knight c6 is always better than knight bd7. Okay, what can I say? It's, in my opinion, it's just matter of taste. So, for example, here knight bd7 or knight a6 or knight c6 or e takes d4 or even bishop g4, it's was played by Caruada, so it's just matter of taste. So I think there is no reason to declare that in this position some of moves can be better than other moves. So it's matter of taste, in my opinion. Who won this match, which I consider now? Mikhail Tal won this match with score 5.5 against 4.5. Uh-huh. Spassky. Yes. Okay, so Spassky I will write for myself. Spassky Road. Okay, yes, it's interesting topic. Taimanov between Larsen Tal, I thought. Taimanov between Larsen. Between Larsen. Taimanov between Larsen. Okay. Okay, thanks for your subscription. Do you watch Wales against Ukraine? Now 64. I watched a little bit Ukraine Scotland. 3-1 won Ukraine. Now they are playing against Wales. And what is score at the moment? Thanks for subscription. It's very helpful. 1-0 for Wales. Okay. Okay, let's come back. For chess, football is interesting, but so knight c6, f3 played Larsen, f5, and now he played g4. It's variation, Ivar Gibbs's variation. It's not very popular now, but Ivar Gibbs's played many times, and there is idea, for example, f4 to play h4 to block position in king's flank, and then start to play something active in queen's flank. But at the moment this line it's not so popular because after g4 it's not necessary for black to play f4 in some moments. So according to my knowledge, the best plan for black is something like this. So knight f6, for example, and for example, knight d3, c6, and then in some moment black is playing king h8. In some moment even b5 is possible. So very important for black to keep tension in the center. Never played f4, and in this case white king a little bit weak after g4, so black has enough contraplay. There are many games, but at the moment line f3 g4 it's not so popular like that time. But okay, this is a situation of modern theory. That time was different, and even Tal played immediately h5, which according to modern theory it's not recommended. So g5. So what white wants? If f4 to play h4, and now black are totally blocked in king's flank, and white have free hands to prepare b4, c5, and attack in another wing. So positionally this situation is very bad for black already. Best way to progress in chess? Okay, it's depends of level and depends of goals and many things. Kramnik, okay, King's India, it's special topics. Of course, I have interest in games in King's India. Also, Kramnik has, that's true case. But okay, so now h5 and h4. So it looks like, hello. So you are in France, from France. Unfortunately, I cannot speak French. I understand a little bit, but I cannot yet. Maybe I will try to improve it. Yes, I don't understand Tal because probably I didn't analyze a lot of time his games, and today it will be probably also step for me to understand him better. So h5, h4, knight d3, f4. So it looks like Tal wants to attack g5 pawn and try to win this. But okay, we can see that even if imagine that in some moment black will win this pawn, white for sure will have excellent compensation because bishop g7 is very passive, and also white has many ideas in the queen's flank, so somewhere after taking on g5 white can utilize G line, so this plan looks extremely dubious for black. What? By the way, king h1, very logical reaction. White doesn't want to give g5 a pawn without fight, so king f7. So plan of black is rook h8, rook h5, and something like this, but it doesn't look convincing because it's looks like too long and white have uh, good contraplay. And Larsen immediately starts his attack. He played c5. So, of course, not only idea this position, totally possible was to play rook g1, I think. Okay, maybe rook h8, even bishop f1 is possible with idea to prepare bishop h3. Okay, who can understand games of Tal? Okay, maybe better than me can understand players who played against him at least several times, and also who spend more time with analyzing of his game. But okay, so I am I'm only trying this. So this position in general I don't like for black. For example, rook h5, bishop h3. So bishop e6 is unpleasant threat. So what to do? Knight f8. Okay, I can take here. So queen takes c8. Okay, but black has some ideas. So knight h7 is ready, and then to take on g5 finally. But okay, white can try simply play rook g4, knight g7, queen g1. Just fight for this pawn. Okay, knight g8, for example, with idea bishop f8, bishop e7, but okay, bishop d2, white is ready for bishop e1. So knight f8 before. Knight f8 is possible, but after knight f8, c5 already is coming. White starts to attack, and so, for example, c5, and for example, if rook h5, bishop d2, knight h7, rook c1, knight takes g5, takes, knight b5. Black won the pawn, but white has already quite unpleasant threats in other wings. I think this position probably better for white, although probably not so clear. But if, for example, knight h3, white has even rook g4 idea. If after this, black is losing the piece. Okay, so rook g1, yes. On knight takes f4 and bishop takes f4 is also idea which white can consider in some positions. That's true, but white has many other options as well. So Larsen played c5. It's very logical move because king on f7 in danger, so if d takes c5, queen b3 looks unpleasant. With idea d6, so black should play king e8, but it looks like dubious. Okay, maybe it's not losing immediately, but pretty dangerous. So white has very strong initiative only for the one pawn and many pleasant plans. So Tal played rook h8, queen b3 played Bent Larsen. Another logical choice looks like just take on d6 and played knight b5, very natural. So I have feelings that position of black it's hardly playable. Knight b6 is necessary to play, and it has many moves. Queen b3 probably to prepare bishop d2. Maybe even, I don't know if bishop d2 immediately. Maybe bishop d2 immediately is possible as well also, but knight c4 I'm a little bit worried about. And now if knight takes f4, knight takes d2, knight e6, maybe even this also is good for white, because if queen a5, knight takes d6, unpleasant. If bishop e6 take, so even this looks like good for white. So white has many attractive ideas. Okay, but Larsen played queen b3, so he has also idea to push c6 probably in some moment. But Tal played b6, and now he, well, if c6, knight f8 position is more or less closed. White has some ideas to take on f4, although it's maybe even this it's quite promising for white, because black knights are out of place, so white wants to prepare bishop e3, f4, something like this. Thank you. Okay, but so c6 was possible, but with idea to take on f4, maybe not immediately, maybe rook g1 is possible, and later to take on f4. Also a4, a5 is idea, so white has very promising position, but Larsen took on d6, which seems me also logical. C takes d6, knight b5. So queen a3 played. Knight b5 was possible as well. After knight b5, I think Tal planned to play knight c5 and take with this pawn. More or less playable position, although even here I prefer white, because I don't see what is real black contraplay. So only to take somewhere g5 pawn, but it doesn't look like convincing, and how to reach it. Well, for example, rook h5, rook g1. White somewhere can play knight a3, knight c4, or queen a3, and bishop a5 is coming. So black has chronicle weakness on d6, so I don't like black position, but okay, so it's choice. So queen a3 played Bent Larsen, knight c5, he took on c5, wasn't necessary, of course. Knight f2, totally good move to prepare b4, and if rook h5, rook g1, okay, so it's matter of taste. Takes and b4. So Larsen wants to open diagonal a3 f8 and attack pawn d6 with queen, with knight from b5, and also with bishop from a3. Rook g1. Of course, white can ignore a threat take on f1, so totally possible was bishop a3, for example. If black takes, white can take even with bishop, with idea bishop h3, bishop e6 to prepare, and also knight b5 as threat. So, Hardly black can be happy with such position. But okay, so Larsen probably decides that his position is good enough, so it's not necessary to do exchange, the sacrifice of exchange. So it's Rook G1 he played, solid move. Now this is very illustrative game because now we can see very clear main problem for black in close King's Indian. So knight on e7, terrible, and bishop g7, terrible. So and also pawn d6, chronicle weakness. Of course, not always in King's Indian white can reach such a position, but in this game, Bent Larsen managed to have this position. I explain why, because h5 and h4 wasn't a good idea. But okay, it's clear now for everybody that this is not the best plan. It's better to play knight f6, c6, king h8, and b5 somewhere and keep tension on the board. But in that moment, according to theory of 60s, in that moment it wasn't so clear. Yes, and the g5 pawn, it's a little bit weak, so black can. Yes, knight f5 was possible, but what played Larsen also looks like very logical. Knight f2. Now g5, yes, the pawn which somewhere black can attack, but from other point of view it's important pawn because black has no square f6 for his knight, for his bishop. So if black will not take this pawn, so it will be very helpful pawn for white, and white can control whole of the board. Okay, so rook b8 played Tal. I don't know if there is something bad. Okay, queen b6 is possible, but in endgame, of course, white chances is much better. Also, probably queen d7 was logical to prepare rook hd8, but anyway, I don't see possibility for black to solve all of his problems successfully. So rook b8 played Tal, knight b5, pawn d6 is already attacked, so knight c8 is more or less forced. Okay, rook b6 is possible, but after rook b6, bishop a3, black should play knight c8 anyway, so no achievement. So knight c8, bishop a3, white simply attacking, so knight takes d6 is threat, black has no time to play a6, so bishop f8, now looks like a6 is threat. So black wants to win the piece, and because of this queen c4 played Bent Larsen. Of course, queen c3 was also playable. Yep, queen c4. Idea probably to prepare knight c7, knight e6 in some variation. Bishop e7. And now queen c7. So Larsen decide to exchange queens. Of course, this is possible, but not only decision, because bishop takes g5, it's hardly threat. White can take on g6 somewhere. So, for example, something like rook c1 was possible, I think. After bishop g5. Let me think, what is this? Queen c7 check. Bishop e7 only move. And knight takes a7, it's not possible for white. This is a problem because black will take, and now white is losing the piece. So after rook ac1, bishop g5, probably it's acceptable for black suddenly. Of course, difficult to believe that even this position is good for black, because white has ideas like, well, even bishop f1 is possible idea. Bishop d7 not possible, because I will take on d6. After this I will take, also with idea queen g2. So if bishop f6, for example, rook c6 is coming, so or rook c7, or knight c7, so looks like, even this looks like very, very dangerous. Bishop f1. No, bishop f1, I won't just exchange this bishop and to have light squares very weak. So of course, bishop f1 immediately, it's logical. Okay, but maybe now bishop d7 it's possible when pawn d6 is protected. So rook ac1, it's more interesting to provoke bishop g5, and now bishop f1. To play bishop f1, at the moment, no, sorry. Bishop, no, now bishop d7. If after rook c1, if now rook g5, okay, maybe rook g5, but why not just take? I don't understand. So takes, and looks like, okay, rook c8 only move, but black has very weak pawn on a6, and no, on e5 also move. So queen a6, for example, it looks like. Sorry. Rook is not protected. So what? So bishop c7, of course. Bishop c7. So queen f6 is only move. And okay, and hard to believe that this position can be playable for black even after queen a6. Simple move. So equal material, but has total domination. Yes, so beautiful, but Larsen played queen c7. Okay, so it's not obvious decision, and probably after such exchange, black has some chances to survive. But surely they need to consolidate his pieces somehow. But is it possible? So Tal took on c7. Bishop d7, unfortunately, not possible for black, because white can just take on d6 and win the pawn. Everything is protected. And so bishop d7 is bad, but if there are any alternatives, a6 is hardly improvement. White can take, and rook takes knight c7, so this is hardly better for black than in the game. So he took on c7, knight takes c7. So what we can see that endgame on the board, and white has much more active pieces. Rook h5. So white Tal is looking for contraplay, but who knows? Maybe just bishop d8 was better. Try to defend this position. Bishop takes g5. Bishop takes g5. There is proposition rook takes g5. Uh, rook takes g5, maybe even stronger. Okay, queen takes g5, queen c7, knight e7, knight e7, rook g1. But why rook g1? Okay, if I just take, also looks like very, very promising for white. So black should go king f6 or king g7 you want. If rook g1, queen f6. Okay, now even knight f5 is possible, such a trick. If g takes f5, I have rook g1. Okay, in your variation, rook g1, maybe even simple. After queen f6, knight f5, white is just winning. And then bishop takes e7. So, bad position for black almost everywhere. So takes, rook h5. Okay, probably now was the best chance to defend this position. Bishop d8, I mean. My idea to activate his bishop. So if knight b5, probably king e7, something like this. Although rook c1, or another rook. With idea rook takes c8 in some moment. Okay, his position is still unpleasant, but okay, but now bishop b6. So rook c8, not so clear. Maybe another rook is better to go here to avoid bishop b6 and to prepare rook takes c8 in some moment. But for example, bishop d7, rook takes c8, maybe not so clear, maybe clear, because bishop takes d6, bishop takes e5 is coming. So, yes, even this is possible. Although also rook b1 is possible. Okay, so rook h5. So Tal in this game has only idea to attack the pawn, but at the moment Larsen played bishop f1. This idea I recommended in many other positions already. So bishop takes f1. Probably more stubborn was bishop d7. I have feelings that wise choice for black not exchange bishops immediately, but Tal took and he took the pawn, so he is pawn up, but this pawn, it's not important, while he has very bad rook on g5 and many weaknesses in queen's flank. So knight e6, rook h5, rook ac1. Knight e6 was important to prevent h3. So if h3, rook g2 looks like contraplay for black. So knight e6, rook c1. Now black has no this idea of contraplay, and white is ready to rook c7, another rook to c1, and for black it's extremely difficult to defend pawns a7 and d6. So king f6, rook c7, rook h8, rook c1, g5, h3. So we can see black has pawn up, so finally they took pawn g5, but in this position it's totally not important. So it's like in drafts, backward piece. So g5 is backward piece. So if image in drafts, for example, white has how to explain. For example, very simple. If white has in drafts f4 and h4 pawns, and black has f6, g7, h6, this triangle. So if black to move, they lost because g7 pawn is awkward. And interesting that without g7 piece, It's draw because hg5 and after take fe5 and black will go to the king. So same story. h3 instead g5, probably. Yes. Probably it was white could play h3 immediately. So, okay, but maybe you are right. Maybe h3 for practical reason looks like much more logical, but knight takes f4 doesn't work. So, yes, it's really strange moment. So h3 looks better. Difficult to explain why Tal didn't play this. Of course, white has excellent positions. They can play king g1, king f1, king e2, but at least black have some chances somewhere to prepare g5, rook g8, and g4. Yes, so this is strange moment. So you are totally right. h3 was totally necessary to play, and very hard to explain why Tal didn't play such an obvious move. Probably also mistake in the text. Probably Larsen played h3 immediately. It's also difficult to understand why Larsen didn't fix it this pawn immediately. So okay, but after g5, h3, its situation is hopeless. So rook c6, king f7, king g2. So black is just waiting, but it cannot help. Knight b6. So probably after rook takes a7, he wants to play rook a8, something like this. But Larsen played this, rook g8, and okay, result 0-1. Could be time pressure, yes, could be. But okay, now, so my explanation that game was adjournment because in that time games usually was adjourned after move 4 and Tal resigned without resuming of game. And position looks like totally hopeless after bishop takes d6. Okay, so after game 1, Bent Larsen is leading. He won quite convincing game in King's Indians because of better opening strategy. And second game, Tal plays with white, and it was Spanish. Knight f6. Modern chess Berlin. After castle, take on e4. Modern lines knight take e4, knight d6. If 1, knight d6, s5, knight takes e5, bishop. But Larsen played d6. It's quite defense in my opinion. Defense more precise d6. Of course, if black wants to play without a6, bishop a4, d6, also black thing is defense without a6, with d6 immediately. And what is different that, for example, after castle, bishop d7, now after d4, black has plan to take, and after knight takes d4 to play g6. And idea if knight c3, for example, bishop g7, and now there is advantage for black that they are playing without a6, bishop a4, because if image, for example, Uh, Not just here, but here knight takes c6. After b takes c6, white bishop is not attacked, and white can play something logical like bishop e3, for example. But if without a6, if take on c6, b takes c6, white should play with bishop, lost tempi, and black will finish his development easily and will have comfortable play. And also if bishop e3, knight g7, and then castle, and also this position, according to theory, it's totally playable for black. So now we see idea g6, bishop g7, knight g7. So for black in this slide, it's better not hurry with knight f6. Old license, yes. Old and rare lights like bird opening. A bit passive, but it's playable. I played classical stages defense in during the World Champion Rapid and Blitz Championship in Astana. My result was bad, but my positions after the opening wasn't bad. So I recommend to see if somebody are interested. My games from Astana 2012 with black. I mean, in this position after d6. But okay, so Larsen played knight f6, castle, and he played d6. Another example from Tal was, and from Tal and from my own practice was move order bishop e7, rook e1, and now d6. Sorry. e5, knight f3, knight c6, bishop b5, g6. G6 is possible. Smyslov system, yes. Yes, okay, Smyslov system, it's another story, but if you are playing Smyslov system, d4 and bishop g5, you need to be well prepared against this line. It's possible to play, but black need to be prepared. Yes, it's playable, yes. c5, queen e3, castle. This playable. That's right. Smyslov style. But knight f6 and d6, it's I don't like. So d4, bishop d7, knight c3. Okay, knight c3, it's of course it's normal developing move, but also, in my opinion, very promising idea for white here is just to play d5, go to King's Indian structure, and in this version bishops will be exchanged. For black it's very difficult to organize contraplay with f5 quickly because knight on f6, for example, if knight e7, just take, queen takes, rook e1, and then c4, knight c3, and for example rook b1 to prepare b4, and white is much better than queen's flank, and black contraplay in king's flank, it's difficult because even if they played knight h5 and f5, knight g5 is coming, so black need to play many moves to prepare f5, and but organize go to b8. It's possible, but after knight b8, I can play queen e2, defend the pawn, and to prepare c4. And in this, for example, if g6, I can take now and to play c4 and then knight c3. And again, black has big problem to organize contraplay in this position. So d5, it's quite a strong move. Also, of course, after knight b8, white has a reasonable idea bishop d3, avoid exchange of bishops, and next move will be c4, knight c3, and again, king's Indian structure, but in a very good version for white, if compare with classical king's Indian position. Of course, it's this position is closed, that probably tempes are not so important, but anyway, white is better here. But queen e2, in my opinion, even better than, than bishop d3, because in general, exchange of these bishops is good for white. Also, it's important idea, purely tactical. So white can just take, if knight takes, to play rook e1. So white plan is standard and simple, c4, knight c3, and knight c5 idea can be punished, because before, if knight takes e4, queen d3, knight is trapped. White has a6. There is question. Okay, I need to add light in my room. So there is question about this. What is the best line for white? Okay, it depends what you want. So I don't know what is the best. But if, for example, you are playing against strong player and you want to make draw as quick as possible, so d4 is the best. And b5, bishop b3, knight takes d4, takes, c3, and after d takes c3, you can play queen d5, and game is finished. So it's time to drink coffee or cappuccino. So bishop e6 only move, queen c6 check, bishop d7, queen d5, and even if your opponent is Magnus Carlsen or Garry Kasparov and you are candidate of masters, okay, black has no reason to play this position. So bishop e6 and bishop d7, it's only move for black. So this is draw. Black cannot avoid. But okay, if white wants to fight for advantage, there are other lines like castle here is possible, like c3 is possible. But I don't know what is the best, so it's matter of taste again. Okay, so let's come back. So d6, d4, bishop d7, knight c3, d5, interesting, but knight c3, e takes d4 plate. Bishop e7 at the moment is possible as well. Maybe even more precise somehow, because now d5 it's not so logical, because knight on c3 it's misplaced a little bit, and white cannot to push c2 c4 so easily like before. Of course, white can play anyway bishop d3 with idea knight e2 c4, but okay, it's slow somehow. For example, a5 is possible, and after knight e2, knight a6, and now after c4, knight c5, white has no time to play bishop c2, and black are ready to exchange bishop, and this position is playable. For black, I recommend to see my game against Anand from Rapid. Excellent position. I made draw, but after the opening with black, I was almost winning. It was a little bit different move order, so he made mistake in the opening very quickly. I will explain. So he played bishop c4, I played d6, and now I want to explain something. So, for example, if to play bishop e7, d4, d6, Hungarian game, white has excellent possibility to play d5, and after knight b8, bishop d3, and c4, knight c3 is coming. Black cannot prevent this, so white is better. But in my game against Anand, it was a little bit different. So I played d6, and he played now. Now he played castle. Yes. And now I played bishop e7. Knight f6 at the moment is bad because knight g5, of course. So I played bishop e7, before knight f6. He wanted same, but after knight b8, bishop d3, I didn't play castle. So after castle, before knight c3, and white happy. After I played knight b7 immediately. He played this although game ended with draw. I recommend to see this game. Okay, but let's come back. So castle d4, bishop d7, knight c3, e takes d4. Knight takes d4, bishop e7, b3. Okay, so this is second game between Tal and Larsen, but also I want to show opening of my game against Lajos Portish. I was white. So and also against Nigel Short. So we can start. Bishop 7, game Tal Portish. So another game from Tal. After bishop e7, another possible line if black doesn't want to play knight takes e4 here, bishop c5. c3, castle, d4, bishop b6, bishop b5, h6, bishop h4, d6. So many in this position. Also takes e5, line game against this game against I'm worried if everything is correct. So please confirm that I'm not speaking with emptiness or to emptiness. It's fine now. Okay. So let's continue. Okay, bishop c5. It's another possible line. So bishop e7, rook e1, d6, d4. E takes d4, and knight takes d4 was my game against Nigel Short. Bishop takes d6, c6 was game Tal Portish. So against Portish, Tal took bishop c6 and took with queen. Castle, knight c3. Portish played bishop g4. It's not necessary. Black has alternatives. For example, rook e8 looks like very logical in this moment. So bishop g4, Portish played. Queen d3. Bishop takes f3. Maybe knight d7 is possible, because if knight d4, knight e5. It looks like logical alternative. If knight d4, knight e5 is coming. But Portish took immediately, and b3, bishop f6, bishop e3. So we see that Tal put bishop on a3. Looks like useless because pawn d6 is very well protected, but important for white to prepare rook a d1 and then go somewhere with knight on c3 and then probably c4 is coming. So this is pawn structure which white is dreaming for. So rook e8, rook d1, rook e6, knight e2. So probably rook e6 was not the best one because now white is ready to play knight d4 or knight f4. Bishop e5, I don't know if it's correct move. Maybe queen e8 was better. Anyway, try to attack, but no, okay, knight d4 takes. Probably white is better anyway, because if black cannot attack e4 pawn, it's not easy to organize contraplay in this position. Portish played bishop e5, bishop queen d3 now. And now f4 e5 is coming, so this position is obviously bad for black. So white has everything under control. Okay, so and this was a game played by Mikhail Tal, and now also another game was played by me against Nigel Short and Lajos Portish. So against Nigel Short I took on c6 with bishop, bc6, c4, knight c3, rook e8. Okay, it's also in position, but white need to play solid. So b3 I played, it's not necessary, more logical to play h3 and then bishop f4 to prepare e5 in some moment. Okay, I played b3 and now bishop f4. And now I played h3, also not necessary. Maybe queen d3 was more precise to prepare rook a d1, but h3, knight d7, and suddenly I have tactical problem with knight f6. And I played e5. I think better was to play rook c1 here to prepare knight d5. If bishop f6, I have knight d5. But I played e5, d takes e5, bishop takes e5. Probably I wanted him to take with knight, and my idea was to create some tactical threats like this, but he played bishop f6, and there is important problem that after knight d5 he can take on e1 here, and now I cannot take. Maybe I can take. Oh, okay. Probably I can take with queen, but it's not obvious. At least black has contraplay like knight b6, queen d1 only move, rook d8, and I need to play queen c1, and black has very active pieces because my piece is a little bit discoordinated. Maybe although nothing bad, knight f3 is coming. He can take a1, where he can take a1. Here he can take, but and now knight f8. Yes, knight f8. It's important because if king h7, queen e4, queen e2, knight f8. Yes, it's very important. So I cannot do it. Yes, that's right. Knight f8. It's important. I cannot protect a2. So after knight b5, okay, so I did something wrong, and he played knight f8, very creative idea. So I have problem with coordinated of pieces. So if queen c1, knight g6 is unpleasant, so I played knight d5, and we agreed to draw. I have no advantage here. But okay, so e5 was premature idea. Against Portish, I played in another style, so yes. Knight e6, d4, yes. In this position, yes, knight e6, knight d4, but okay, I'm not in danger, so knight e6, probably g3. Hola, if knight d4, king g2, to prepare knight f3, or knight d3 if queen b1. Okay, position is approximately equal in my opinion. So Okay, against Portish I played knight c3 here. So bishop f1 I played firstly. Idea to avoid any exchange, like in the game Tal Larsen. So now knight c3 and bishop f4. Or probably for black is better not hurry take on d4. Probably rook e8 is better to prepare bishop f8, something like this. Because he took and he played knight h5 and now he played bishop takes c3 and after this I'm obviously better. This is a bad strategy for black. And I want quite instructive game. So, but okay, let's come back to Tal Larsen. Tal Larsen game 2. So bishop b5, e takes d4, bishop e7, Tal played b3 immediately. Oh, so he wants to play bishop b2. For black, it's totally possible just castle and play rook e8. It's possible, but zonal, okay, normal format, nothing bad at least. But modern format, it's also possible. Difficult to say what is better. Okay, so but Larsen decided to simplify position, so, and now he played knight d7. So castle was possible, but after bishop b2, black cannot play with his knight, only to h5 or e8, but it's not so tempting. So knight d7, tactical trick. White cannot take on g7 because after bishop f6, they are losing material, of course. So black wants to play bishop f6. And Tal played bishop a3, another original move. So he liked to put bishop on a3 in staying his defense. I already showed game against Portish, but objectively, I'm not sure that this is the best choice. For example, very natural looks queen c4 immediately. Attack the pawn, if c6, for example, knight d4 to prepare knight f5. Okay, maybe Tal decides that here white advantage is not so big. For example, after castle, if knight f5, black has idea bishop f6, if rook b1, d5, and if e takes d5, knight b6, maybe something like this. And important that score was in favor of Larsen. Probably Tal decides that here he has no special advantage, but it's not obvious for me. For example, now queen g4 is possible with idea bishop h6. Maybe black has tactical problems. So at least queen c4 looks like very natural move and more natural. Yes, Kasparov also bishop a3 played quite often in Scotch, also against me. He played bishop a3. In my game against Kasparov, opening was d4, knight f6, takes, e5, queen e7, queen e2, knight d5, c4. I played bishop a6. Knight b6 is a solid alternative, but I played bishop a6. Gary played b3, g6, bishop a3, queen g5. G3, knight c3, knight c3, bishop takes a3. It was in Tilburg and it was my first draw against Gary with black. Before this, I had 0-6 without any draws. I mean, just with black. With white, I had some points. So this was a game. I played Blitz with Larsen attack. Larsen attack, what you mean Larsen attack? Uh, This okay. Now it's Kasparov Ivanchuk, but I put three games in one. So firstly, I explained game one. Tal was white. Sorry, Larsen was white. Now I started to explain game two. Tal is white, and then I will explain game three. So Larsen will play with white again. Second game, Tal is white, yes. And what is Larsen attack? B3 or what? What is Larsen attack? I played B3, bishop B2. Okay. Okay, it's playable, of course. Well, let's come back to our main heroes. So, so Tal Larsen, where is this? Here after knight d7, so queen c4 was very reasonable alternative, but Tal played bishop a3 and Bent Larsen played a6. So of course black can just castle. So after castle, I think Tal wanted to play rook a d1, and then he wants to play c4, if a6, knight c3, and probably knight d5, if bishop f6, queen somewhere, knight d5 is ready, something like this. But bishop has tactical, but rook d1, and black has problems with pawn on c7. a6 is possible, but knight takes c7, knight e5. And now white has choice. So interesting position. White queen is attacked, so looks like white should play something with his queen. But if to play queen d5, black can take on c7, bishop takes d6, queen takes c2, and if take on e5, it will be draw. Black can just take and take on a2. So there is a question what, of course white can play something like knight c3, but okay, maybe white is slightly better here, so it's not necessary to take on c7, so knight c3 it's possible. But if take on c7, also possible to play queen e2, queen takes c7, bishop d6, white has a good material, but after queen c3, white has problem to activate his c2 pawn. If f4, knight c6, and rook f3 never possible because knight d4 is coming. So it's black has quite good chances here. Okay, probably Tal just planned to play knight c3. Well, but Larsen played a6 immediately. Knight c3, bishop f6. Again, Tal could play same plan, queen c4 or queen d3, but he played queen d2. Castle, rook a d1. So I'm not sure, maybe queen d3 was even more precise here, because now pawn e4 is protected. Knight c5 maybe, but knight c5 white can just take, and then e5. It was line here, rook d8. Yes, it's possible, but rook d8, I have seen rook d8, but rook d8 is risky in my opinion, because bishop d6 is coming and then e5. So bishop takes e5, in my opinion, is more simple way for black, and they can take on a2, probably rook f8 also possible. So here black has no problem with equalize. Here, if e5 is coming, I'm not sure black can equalize easily. So bishop d6 is problem. Well, so queen d2, probably queen d3 is more precise with tactical idea. If e5 and this endgame is better. Black obviously cannot take because rook e1, f4 is coming, and if bishop e7, rook d1, this endgame is better for white. So queen d3 was stronger because after castle, rook d1, if compare with game, now after rook e8, white can just play knight d5 because pawn is e4 is very well protected. So queen d2 is a dubious move, in my opinion. Castle, rook d1, rook e8. So white need to lose tempo to defend this pawn. Okay, it's not a terrible news for white. So Tal played rook fe1. Well, another logical move was f3, of course, to prepare knight d5. But probably Tal afraid knight b6. If knight e2, black has d5 with idea to utilize knight on e2 is unprotected. For example, takes with knight, and if take, black will take on e2 and solve all of his problem. But after knight b6, white has choice, probably. Many moves are possible. King h1, for example, can be considered and just play this position. Bishop c3 is possible, but it's a little bit passive. Of course, nothing terrible, but just slightly better for white. So rook fe1, knight b6. And Tal played bishop b2. So he doesn't want to play f3, although in my opinion, f3 it's logical idea here to prepare knight e2, c4. But he played bishop b2. Okay, he wants to play a4 now. Okay, it's possible, but I'm not sure how strong is this plan objectively. So queen d7, a4, queen c6, a5, knight d7, bishop a1. So rook a6. Now bishop takes c3 looks very logical idea. Much more logical than before, because now if bishop takes c3, black can take on e4. Okay, although white has some compensation, but hard to believe that such style of compensation can be enough for more than equality here. I think. But who knows? Maybe it's not so obvious, but I have feelings that white has no very strong attack. But of course, white can take with queen, but in this position, it's very good for black that they exchanged queens already. And although white still slightly better, but f6, yes. f6, king f7, knight e5, in some moment black is very solid position, and for white it's extremely difficult to do something. So bishop takes c3 was very logical idea and very practical idea. Thanks for subscription. But Larsen played rook e6, so probably he thought that knight d5 is not dangerous for him. And okay, let's see. Knight d5 was played, takes. And now rook a e8 he played. Okay, so there are questions. Obviously, knight on d5 can be considered like a strong piece for white. So, very tempting idea, in my opinion, to play knight f6 immediately. Attack pawn e4 and I want to try to exchange knights. So if knight takes, rook takes, black can be happy with such exchange, and I don't think that there are any problem to reach draw in this position. Of course, white can play rook a4, rook c4, but if black is playing accurately, it doesn't look like serious advantage for white. So it's only this. So knight f6 was totally possible, and hard to believe that white has something else, because pawn e4 is hanging. So somewhere knight takes d5 can be considered. So knight f6 was solid choice. But Larsen played rook a8, and now f3. Now it's not so easy, because if knight f6, white has c4. So if compare here c4, black can take pawn, and I don't see tactical refutation. And then rook e8 coming. So now c4 doesn't work, simply. But now after rook e8, if knight f6, c4 looks like a strong move, because if black is taking, c takes d5, queen c5 only move, king h1, and then rook c1, white has obvious pressure. Okay, maybe even here black can hold the position with rook e7. If, for example, rook c1, queen b5 to prepare f5 in some moment, maybe also it's playable for black, but looks a little bit passive. But looks if next move f5 is coming, it will be not passive anymore, but necessary to calculate. For example, before, if possible, f5 now. F5 now maybe not so good. Maybe good, I don't know. Okay, we can try to check. I mean, this line, so takes, So at the moment, black cannot take on d5, of course, because mate, but probably after king f8, everything is okay. So I don't see possibility for white to defend on d5. If queen d5, queen d1, queen takes b4. So looks like this queen's endgame drawish, maybe. Maybe white has some chances, I don't know. For example, to play h3, if queen takes d5, queen h4 with idea queen d8, so maybe it's not so simple. But okay, for example, after b4, black can try to play h6 firstly to prepare f5. But now white can consider g4 to block f5. So it's not so easy, the structure with pawn on c7, backward pawn on c7. Yes, that's true, but that white has somewhere weaknesses. But if white will consolidate the position, if image king g2, h4, h5, black has problem with space. So it wasn't practical decision. So in my opinion, rook e8 practically was mistake. So knight f6, much more accurate move, and black can equalize quite easily, especially it's important in match situation. Okay, after win first game, now to play knight f6, simplified position, made easy draw, and have good move, have good mood because before the next game. Now it's much more complicated. But okay, so Larsen played f5, so it looks like what can I do? Ideas. Okay, so you need just more practice to analyze. So probably Larsen overestimate just overestimate his position. So he didn't want to play knight f6 and make draw, so he played f5, but maybe he just missed rook e3. It doesn't look like so difficult resource, but okay, everything is possible. Everybody are making mistake, and I am not exception. So after rook e3, black suddenly in big trouble because yes, but okay, known to overestimate his position, but he for same time he had excellent calculation. So probably he just missed rook e3 because if he sees rook e3, it's hard to believe that he allowed this position. So that's this. Now, obviously, black is in big trouble because. So, what to do? For example, e3 is possible to consider, but queen d4. Knight c5, only move b4. So, what to play? e2, only move, rook e1. Pawn is stopped, white wants to take, and situations. Okay, maybe it's not hopeless because rook e5 is coming. And my idea if but knight f4. But queen a4, so it's maybe not so bad for black at all. Okay, let's check more carefully. So e3. After e3, white can also take on e3 with knight. Only question how strong it is. So after knight takes e3, black can. Okay, black has no choice because knight c5 is losing before, so but queen b5 is possible, and it doesn't look so bad for black. So if knight d5, rook e2 is possible somehow. So e3 is possible. After queen a4, maybe rook c4. Okay, let's go. Rook c4. Rook c4. Yes. Knight e6 takes on c7. Maybe. Totally possible. Yes, takes, yes. f4 threat. No, black has problem with g7 pawn. Yes, you are right. Okay, so it's already dangerous for black, according to this brief checking. Okay, but Larsen played knight c5. Sorry, I am not Ivan. My name is Vasil. Ivan is Sokolov, Morovich, Farago, many. Sharich, but not me. Knight c5 and knight f4 played Tal. Probably not rook e3, probably knight f4 was what missed Larsen in his calculation. Probably he played this with idea before to take on f3 and if b takes c5, rook e2, something like this. Maybe this was his idea and yes, I read chat, yes. Queen g5, rook takes g2. Yes, I read chat. Which country are you from? Mixture 96. Queen g5, rook takes g2. So probably this was idea of Larsen. Rook takes g2 and some contraplay. I don't know how strong it is, but it's at least interesting. But Tal played knight f4 calmly, and now rook is attacked. So, and we have same line which we were considered. So rook is attacked, b4 is coming. So probably knight f4 is move which missed Larsen in his calculation before playing rook a8. Thank you. So I wish you a nice, pleasant view. My Twitch. And now, if rook f6, b4 is coming. And if e3, queen d4. So e3, queen d4. So same idea. And rook c4, yes. About Leonid Stein. Also, there is question about Leonid Stein. I explained that I'm not well familiar with Mikhail Tal, but with Leonid Stein I even much less familiar. So very difficult to okay, I have seen some games, but he wasn't the player whom I study thoroughly or deeply. I don't know why. Even it's no logic, but at least it's not logical, but at least at the moment very difficult to say about Stein anything concrete. So, okay, but if there is such idea, we can discuss about him in one of next videos. So I can prepare some material. I can prepare some of his games to annotate, and we can discuss about his style as well. Of course, he is brilliant and very interesting chess player, but unfortunately, I don't know him. Yes, okay, I wrote for myself idea about Leonid Stein. And he lived also in Lviv. He is from Ukraine, yes. He was born in Kamenets-Podolsky. It is in Khmelnytsk region, but Fischerstein, okay. Larsenstein was very interesting game from match Soviets against total against rest world. But, okay, but for today I am not prepared. So yes, now black is in trouble. So e2 is stopped and knight needs to go. Black losing c7 pawn and another pawn. So white. Okay, it's no reason for sorry. It's quite an interesting question, and I like if somebody propose ideas to discuss, because we can try to discover chess together. Different players we can try to discover, try to understand their strong parts, their weaknesses, their brilliant moves, and so I am open for new ideas and no reason for sorry. You are free to express them. H4. Okay, so looks like white has material advantage and black has no contraplay, so knight d5. Okay, probably it was time trouble, but it's difficult to suggest something. White can prepare king f2 and attack e2 pawn, also b7. pawn is hanging, so position for black looks like terrible. Knight c5, knight e5, so black lost exchange, and so total collapse. Okay, so but the problem for Larsen starts with in this moment. So after rook a8, so after knight f6, in such a level, hard to believe that in this position white can really fight for win. Okay, it's possible to play this position, but I'm not optimistic about the chances of white here. But okay, it's possible to play rook d f3 and then rook d1. But I have feelings that black can hold it without special problem. Geller. Okay, Geller was excellent player, but he had problem with regular time trouble, and especially in candidates matches. It was painful for him because such a practical players like Spassky and Korchnoi knew very well how to utilize time if opponent is in time trouble. Okay, and for today, last one, game 3. So Larsen is white again. So King's Indian Pioneer, no. He wasn't because, as I showed, Ava played, Bronstein played King's Indian before the Geller a little bit, and also even Chigorin played many King's Indian ideas. I mean, e4, e6, queen e2, and then g3. It's King's Indian, and also Ukrainian player Fedor Bogaterchuk played King's Indian. So okay, Geller surely was excellent King's Indian player, but certainly he wasn't the first who started to play King's Indian. Yes, Romanishин, yes, it's a very important part of Romanishin. Pawn sacrifice, and later Kasparov even improved this style of Romanishin. So I know that he used many games of Romanishin for analyze with pawn sacrifice, and then he utilized this method quite often and quite successfully. So game 3, d4 again. So Tal doesn't want to play King's Indian anymore. He played e6, g3, c5. So no Catalan, but c5. And now white has choice to play knight f3 English opening or to play Benoni with g3. Larsen played d5. And Tal played b5, very risky line, so much more solid to play d6. And now black has white choice. Okay, if King's Indian was considered dubious, I don't think so. It wasn't just a popular opening, but it wasn't it wasn't a well analyzed opening yet in 1940s. But I don't think that it was considered like dubious. Well, for example, against Zdenko Kozhul, I played a6, a7, knight a4, knight bd7, bishop f4, queen c7. Also, queen e7 is possible, but I played a6, a4 before to have queen c7. So I won after very complicated game. Yes, I played, yes, b5, yes. So b5, now white has choice, so bishop g2 is possible, but also knight f3 is interesting line. Yes, Boris Gelfand played with idea if d6 to have e4 utilize his bishop on f1 square. So knight f3 is possible, e4 is possible, for example, Kramnik Alexeyev game and many other games. But bishop g2, d6, and yes, before was Kasparov Korchnoi and later Kasimdzhanov Kasparov. And Kasimdzhanov Kasparov was really funny. So now after castle, Kasparov could play bishop e5, but missed this opportunity. He won easily anyway after castle, bishop f4, knight b6. So, okay, but bishop g2, not necessary, but was played d6, a3, a5. About a5, I'm not sure. So it looks like prophylactic against b4, but if b4 was really strong, it's a bit questioned. For example, totally possible to play g6, in my opinion, if b4 might be d7. Black is prepared for bishop g7. Position looks like acceptable for black. But okay, so a5. So Tal decide to block b4. So knight c3 immediately played Larsen. He's attacking the pawn. Before now looks like dubious because after take, black cannot take with a pawn. After this, positionally black is bad. So queen b6. Knight f3. White has several plans. Even idea a4, b4, knight b5 can be considered here. Knight f3 is solid. Bishop e7, castle, castle. Again, a4 totally possible to fight for squares b5 and c4 for knights. So a4 is logical, but Bent Larsen chose another plan. About memory, no, I don't using special methodics for memory, only I'm trying to keep my brain active and I'm making some physical exercises. So, but a4 was possible, but Larsen preferred to play in the centrum. He played e4, knight bd7, rook e1. Now a4, b4, knight b5, knight takes e4 probably is possible. Although I'm not totally sure it's rook e1. Black probably has some tactical problems here. If f5, for example, knight d2, it's not so simple. After knight takes d2, white can take on d2 with idea rook e6 or just take on e7. So probably a4 even here was interesting idea. But rook e1, now bishop a6. Played Mikhail Tal and e5. So Bent Larsen continues his plans, but even here a4 was a reasonable idea to fight for c4 and b5 squares. So after b takes a4, white can take with queen and immediately attack the pawn a5. If b4, knight b5 is coming, and if, for example, black is taking this pawn, white can just play bishop f1 and then queen b7 probably the best, knight d2, and knight will go to c4 with more than enough compensation for the pawn. It's quite standard ideas. Black pawns are blocked and white has many ideas. Knight c4, f4, e5, b3, bishop b2, so more than enough compensation for the pawn. But Larsen is playing e5, so he likes to play in centrum, in this position at least, or in these games. But Position was simplified. d6 immediately, bishop takes d6, not bring any special to white, so bishop g5 he played. b4 after bishop a6, b4 here. Yes, it's another standard method. But I'm not so sure because knight g4 is coming, and then bishop f6, probably in this position. Black has contraplay because of also of weakness on f2 pawns. About this position before, I'm not sure. Okay, so e5 he played. Bishop g5, h6. Very natural. Rook takes e7. So what is this? I see some tactics in the board, but how to evaluate it? If to take twice, twice on b4. Twice on b4 maybe possible as well, but knight a2 is idea. And white wants to take on b4 with knight, and I'm not sure how black can protect this pawn in a good way. Okay, knight g4 is possible anyway, but now rook e2. If bishop f6, rook b1, with idea to take on b4. So if b3, I will not take on b3, I will play knight b4. So okay, so it's possible to consider, but I have feelings that tactically it's dangerous for white, especially after b4, knight g4 immediately, because white has many targets to attack, so diagonal a1, h8, pawn f2, knight on c3 is hanging a little bit. Okay, probably with very precise play it's possible, but other alternatives seems to me like more tempting, especially a4. But Larsen played e5, so this. Rook takes e7. Now black has obvious choice to take on e7 or to take on g5. Okay, so Mikhail Tal took with rook on e7. So okay, if this d6 probably is the same. If black is taken on e7, I don't know what about. Knight a2. No, after b3, knight b4. It's, I think it's a more reasonable idea. Yes, I understand, but knight b4 I will play, and black still have some problem with his bishop on a6. If knight c5, knight d4. So I want to give this pawn and attack knight f5 or knight c6 in some moments. Not necessary to take on b3 for white. Okay, so now d6. Okay, it's not obvious. Black probably has possibility rook d8 now. Maybe his position is totally playable. Because if knight d5, queen takes d6 just coming. So knight d5 doesn't work. And what else white can do? If white takes, black can take even with knight. d7, knight f6. But maybe now knight d5 is possible. Not so easy for black to take pawn d7. Okay, so Tal took with rook, and now white cannot take and play d6 because rook d8 is prepared. If knight d5, queen takes d6. So d6 played Larsen. Now rook d8 not possible because bishop takes f6. It's very simple. If rook d6, bishop takes e7 is coming. If g takes f6, queen g4 is coming. White is weak, so h takes g5 is rook e8, simple and logical. So white cannot defend this pawn, so black is fighting for advantage. Queen takes g5, material is equal, but black pawns seems like more dangerous than white ones. Queen d6 played Tal. Okay, practical decision. Before is possible immediately, but after before, knight d5, knight d5, bishop takes d5. White probably has some contraplay. Rook is hanging. If queen d6, rook d1, with idea bishop takes f7, something like this. If rook d7, rook e1 is coming, some mating threats. So queen d6 looks like logical idea. But why logical? I'm trying to understand and I don't understand. So Larsen played h4, but what was problem with rook d1? Rook d1 looks like very natural move, and I'm trying why Bent Larsen didn't play this, and at the moment I cannot see because queen takes d1, knight takes d1, and bishop f1. Black has nothing, so queen e5 probably. But after queen e5, white has several. No, queen takes d1, knight takes d1, and if rook. Maybe this, and maybe just take here, and before is coming. Maybe this is explanation. Yes, maybe this, yes. And before is coming. Okay, but I need to check how convincing is this. And also, who is playing for win here? So what white can do? So king g2 is possible. Bishop b7, f3. Okay, so we can check. So king g2. Bishop b7 looks like the best. I don't know if black has reasonable alternatives. So f3 takes, king somewhere. King g2, rook f2 is possible. So king h3 and maybe draw. Okay, what else? So very interesting idea. Maybe also white has b4 idea, but okay, it's dangerous for white because unpleasant pin. Black can take twice on b4. Yes, probably this is real problem for white. Instead of trades, knight e4, when knight e4 instead of trades. So queen d6 looks like a nice trick. So yes, surely after rook d1, Tal prepared to take and rook e1. Okay. So now I understand dangers of rook d1. Only I need to check if it really works. But maybe it works. At least I don't see refutation. Yes, so queen takes d1, it's idea. Oh, very good played by Tal. Oh, h4 played Larsen, and now b4. Takes on b4, takes with c pawn. Not an obvious decision, but probably with take with another pawn, knight d5 is coming. And black has problem with bishop on a6 in some variation. Example this. Maybe it's not a hard problem, however, so rook e5 may be possible. Because if rook takes a6, black has queen takes d5 at least. So position is better to take with a pawn, and then c4 is coming. So, but only tactically, so probably. But how white can? Oh, okay, probably white can take with queen. Maybe it's more precise. And black has problem to defend his bishop on a6. Black cannot play this for win. Draw, it's possible after takes and bishop d3. That looks like drawish. So Tal took with this pawn, knight d5, and Tal played rook e5 immediately. So he doesn't want to take anymore, because after take takes, and he has problem with a5 pawn. So rook e5. So it looks like quite good level game tactically. Positionally, maybe not so good, because a5, for example, it's dubious move in my opinion. But tactically, looks quite strong. So rook e5. He played knight f6. This, and optically, hola. Mis saludos a jugadores mexicanos. Ahora parece que negro tiene ventaja, pero blanco está bloqueando los peones con alfil c6. I explained that. Looks like more promising for black, but white has time to block black pawns. White doesn't allow to play a4 quickly. So today is 58 viewers, okay? It's not a bad. Sometimes I have more viewers. Gracias. Bishop c4 played time. Maybe bishop d3 more precise, by the way, to prepare bishop c2. I'm not sure. But move 27, it could be time trouble. Muy bien, español. Maybe bishop d3 was the best idea to prepare bishop c2. Okay, maybe position is drawish, but still not so pleasant. Somewhere black can consider also idea to play rook e2 And after rook takes a5 to takes on b2 and try to utilize b pawn. So I don't think that it's very easy for white to make draw in this position. So bishop d3 I like, but Tal played bishop c4, bishop d3 maybe was better. But Tal played bishop c4, now f4. And now Tal played rook c5. Also not obvious. But so rook e2 looks like a very tempting move. Because pawn is attacked, white cannot... Çok teşekkürler. White cannot defend the pawn, so only possibility to take, and now bishop d5 is possible, but bishop d3. Black wants this. Okay, but now rook a7, white has contraplay, rook b7. So we can see now that bishop need to be in diagonal b1 h7 to b3. Rook e3 instead rook e2. No, rook e3. Rook e3 is also possible, yes. Because if rook a5, just to take and then try to win the pawn. Yes, maybe, but I don't believe that black has very big winning chances here. Before rook, because for example, after rook b3, bishop d5, this rook endgame, it's totally drawish, looks like. This is draw. Before rook takes, here, no, rook e3, yes. So in my opinion, okay, so black is better, certainly black is better, but bishop c4, it's in, no, bishop c4, f4 he played, so black has no time to play bishop b3 because rook is hanging, so rook e2 was possible, but white has enough chances for draw. But after rook c5, white blocked it, and now black has problem with bishop. So if bishop d3, rook d1, bishop c2, rook c1. So here was important moment that he missed bishop d3. Now after bishop d3, white is in serious trouble. I have such a feeling. Because black has many ideas and white has no contraplay. After bishop c4, so bishop is not so good on c4 than on d3. And now after f4, if black is taking b2 pawn, white has time to organize contraplay against f7 or go to rook endgame, which should be draw. After rook c5, rook is not so active because white has c2 square under control and white king is ready to go to e3 via f2 quickly. So black has no winning ideas anymore. So bishop e6 played Tal, and now rook e1 played Larsen. Also bishop d5 now? Bishop d5 you mean? Okay, but after bishop d5, what is the idea? King f2 simply. White wants king e3. If b3, white can simply play rook e1. And somewhere pawn b3 can be even weak for black. So okay, at the moment black cannot be walls, but if imagine that explain some bad moves. It can be. So after bishop e6, white could play same idea. So just play king f2 to prepare king e3. If b3 to play rook e1. This idea rook c2, rook e2, and black cannot play bishop c4, bishop g4 because white just take twice. So black should play something like rook c1, but it's like looks like easy draw. Okay, maybe rook e1. So it's draw. But Larsen decided to play rook e1 immediately. Probably he expected b3 with same idea, king f2. But Tal played suddenly bishop a2, very original move. But it looks like okay, he's looking for practical chances. But now rook e3 and pawn is blocked. Bishop b1. Okay, move 31, it could be also time trouble. Maybe black can consider also check and to play rook b1. Try to provoke b3. If b3, rook b2, white will have a headache b3 pawn. If rook e2, okay, bishop c4 and then rook a1, so this looks like stronger. So probably rook e1 was serious inaccuracy from Larsen. So king f2 looks like much more precise. And bishop a2, it's interesting idea, but not obvious again, because if king f2, white simply playing what black wants. So what is doing bishop on a2? It's a big question for me. Okay, b3, but it doesn't look like dangerous for me. So b3, white can play king e3 simply. So I have no feelings that black can play for win in this position. With bishop on a2, no. It's something very strange. With bishop on e6, so you mean in this position just improve king, but king g7, yes, it's a reasonable idea, but probably white can just play king f2, king g6, king e3, and if king h5, bishop d1 check already possible, so not so easy. If king f5, even h5. Also bishop d1 with idea g4, h5. Okay, so it looks like white has enough resources. But okay, so rook e3 looks like a very bad move. So he allows check. So probably again was time trouble for Larsen, because after king f2 I don't see any problem for white. So rook e3 and now bishop b1, very strange move instead of natural rook c1. If king h1, bishop d1 always. Now king f3, so black lost many tempes to put bishop on correct diagonal, and now white is ready for g4. So it means like b3. Okay, this is weak pawn, but now black has no active ideas with king g7, g6, h5, because white pawns are active and white can attack black bishop, rook d3, rook e3. So it looks like drawish. And this is a pin. So if bishop b3, rook takes d1 is possible. So bishop f3 and agreed to draw, because it's obvious that nobody can make any progress here. So king f4. Okay. So for today is all. Yes. Okay, so knight d7 line was game 4, but I will explain this game in next video. I even played knight d7 in my own practice once. But my opponent Lyubomir Lyuboyevich didn't take on f7. So after e4, knight f6, e5, knight d5, d4, d6, knight f3, takes, knight d7. Lyubomir Lyuboyevich played knight f3 against me. When is my next stream? I don't know. In few days, I think. So knight f3 was my game against Lyuboyevich, and after e6, c4 he played this quite comfortable game. And we can consider this game as well. Okay, so good night and all the best for everybody, and thanks for support my channel. Bye.